if you followed any of our Workout Wednesdays, or if you follow along with any of the things that we've talked about in the past with regards to how to move properly, how to exercise properly, you've probably noticed a similar theme. In one of the podcast interviews that we had not long ago, we interviewed the head coaches from the University of West Georgia. And during that interview, you probably noticed that Coach Brian Nichols mentioned CrossFit training with regards to his cheer athletes. Now, let me remind you, the University of West Georgia has won 22 national championships. 22 national championships. They're one of the winningest programs in the history of competitive cheerleading. Both of their coaches, super educated with regards to the fields of cheer, with regards to the fields of athletics, and how to progress and build better cheer athletes, which is exactly what our focus is here. So with us today, we've got an amazing guest, one of my closest friends. Honestly, I feel like the brother that I never had, Mekel Zapico, Coach Mekel. He's a CrossFit Level 2 instructor, and today we get some insight into exactly how CrossFit and cheerleading can blend together to build better cheer athletes.
Ready? 5, 6, 7, 8.
Mekel, thank you so much for joining us today. Like the intro said, you're one of my closest friends. You were my coach, kind of my post cheerleading coach, or the person that helped guide me as an athlete after being an athlete. And I'm super excited to have you on the podcast to get to talk about exactly your coaching methods, CrossFit, your background, and things like that. So for our listeners, give us a little background on who you are, what your expertise is, and things that you do as far as the fitness role.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, thank you for allowing me to come onto this podcast and speak with you and all your listeners. And I was, more than happy to be able to have helped you into, your post cheerleading fitness, as we were able to meet here in San Antonio, and obviously from there build up our friendship and stuff like that, which was super awesome. I guess a little background on myself. I'm a former U.S. Navy veteran, so I spent 5 years in the U.S. Navy from 2005 until 2010. Once I got out of the Navy, I went to school for kinesiology in San Diego, California. Finished with that, and then around that time, 2010, when I was just getting out of the military and getting into just regular civilian life, I kind of found CrossFit. It's something that we were doing on deployment without even really knowing what CrossFit was about, and then got back from deployment, got back to the States, kind of started seeing this trend of CrossFit and functional training and functional fitness. So we were just put together stuff that we thought was cool, and then we started following CrossFit main site website. And and I kind of fell in love with it right then and there. And I knew it was something that I wanted to pursue, not only as a physical passion to make myself, ready as physically as I could, but also as my passion for my career in life. I've always been into trying to help other people. I was a heavier set kid growing up, and through fitness and training, I was able to really get the most out of my body. And that's kind of what I want to preach to everybody else. So I've been involved with CrossFit for since like 2010, but as a coach since around 2013. I am a level 2 CrossFit coach, and I also am a level 1 SPC coach as well with USAW weightlifting. And I am the co-head coach / co-manager of 210 CrossFit here in San Antonio, Texas.
Very cool. So, one of the things that has been, hugely beneficial, with regards to my fitness, and I think back to the years that I spent in competitive cheer, and one of the things that I felt like was lacking, and you and I have discussed this quite a bit, is specific training for cheerleading, and the one thing that I found that really, I look back over the career that I had in cheer, and I look back at my, the career I've had in fitness, and the one thing that's I felt like was missed was the combination of strength training plus cardiovascular training, right? So you look at cheer,
right.
high intensity routines involving lifting people, moving your body through things like gymnastics and tumbling. There's a lot of high intensity activity that happens in a very short period of time. And
right.
when I found CrossFit, I felt like it was the only thing that I had ever done outside of cheer that almost mimicked cheer. So
right,
for the listeners that we have that aren't familiar with CrossFit, can you explain, kind of the elevator speech? What is CrossFit? How does CrossFit, what does CrossFit mean? What is the goal of CrossFit, so that we can start to bridge this gap of understanding of why CrossFit can benefit cheer athletes?
For sure. So at its base, this is just a quick, elevator explanation, but before not getting too in depth, but CrossFit is you're performing functional movements at a high intensity that are constantly varied. So you take anything from as simple as doing pull-ups, push-ups, and air squats to running a mile and then coming in and doing, a heavy deadlift and then maybe some throwing an object. So it really is a tool and a fitness regimen that allows people to build themselves up as a complete athlete. And I think something like that goes into like direct correlation with people who are performing at a high level in cheer, because you're using your whole body at once. You're not isolating any one movement. You're having to carry and hold an odd object, i.e. a person, and you're performing all these routines that really, go hand in hand with kind of what we do in CrossFit. So it's really just a tool and a fitness regimen that allows the whole body to be built up together in one unison to function and perform the way it was intended to before we got into, bodybuilding and stuff like that. Not to say that doesn't have a place, but, we're getting away from the isolation and really building up the whole body together.
No, I think that's a great point. You talk about whole body, right? You think about cheer, a round off back handspring, back tuck, punch, back handspring full, or think about a basket toss. Like every movement, there's nothing that's in isolation, right?
Right,
so
exactly.
We think about the movements in cheer, no matter what aspect of cheer, whether it's dance, tumbling, jumps, stunting, pyramids, etc. There's nothing that's isolation. So we have to train in a way that builds up those compound movements, right?
Absolutely.
It's funny. We usually do a lightning round at the end of every interview, but I almost feel like I want to do a couple of lightning rounds with you just to show, when you look at cheerleading and you look at CrossFit, we can find these similarities between. So if you're game, and I know I'm throwing this at you on the fly. I know you weren't ready for this, but I'm gonna describe a movement in cheerleading, and I want you to describe or call out an equal movement in CrossFit that we would use to build that skill. Is that fair?
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say we're a guy, and in cheer, we do a toss to hands and then press to extension, right? So we would have a girl standing in front of us. We would grab her at her waist. We would then throw her up to the shoulder level, and then we'd press her overhead so that we are in a locked out overhead position. She's standing on her hands. So in CrossFit, what would be similar to that?
So in CrossFit, that would be directly similar to performing a clean and jerk. So i.e. with a clean and jerk, you have a barbell on the ground. The barbell will come through the full hip extension, will come to a stop at the shoulder level. And then from there, you will press it or drive it up overhead to full extension with the barbell over your head. So very similar to what you just described.
Very cool. So Olympic lifting, clean and jerk.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Okay. So how about, let's say I want to do a tumbling pass and I need to be explosive both off of my feet. I need to be explosive off of my hands, and I need to be able to do, let's say, a round off back handspring tuck. So strong on my hands, strong on my legs, explosive off my feet, and being able to pull into a tuck in a tumbling pass. How would CrossFit be similar to that?
So in that instance, the thing that comes to mind at first would be performing a burpee. So a burpee, you're basically starting on the floor and you're pressing off of the floor, landing square on your feet, and then exploding up into a jump from that position. So kind of very similar to what you just described.
How about if, let's say we have an athlete that's struggling with strength with like a handstand. Let's say we have an athlete that's working on handsprings, but they're continuing to collapse into the elbows and they're not strong enough to hold themselves upside down on their hands.
Okay.
Is there something in CrossFit that could help to benefit an athlete that's looking to build like handstand strength?
Absolutely. So the simplest one would have to be called a strict press, or like a military press for those who don't know what a strict press is. And basically, it's taking a barbell from the rack position and without using any other part, right, with that, but still using your whole body as a whole, pressing the barbell overhead with locked out arms until you finish with the full extension of the top. So that's a great way to train the strength in the arms to be able to maintain and hold yourself upright in a handstand. And it also, other things that we do is like handstand hold or even handstand push-ups in CrossFit that it also helps strengthen up those shoulders and arms so that you can indeed hold yourself upside down without any issue.
We talk a lot about, the things we do in cheer are gymnastics based in that we're moving our body and
Right.
or we're moving someone else's body. But in our sport, there's no external forces, right? We don't have weights. We don't have things like that
Right.
to move around. So, when you look at CrossFit's pyramid of fitness, there is a huge component that is similar to cheer. So can you talk about where, the gymnastics component, which is a huge part of cheer, how does that fall into CrossFit's philosophy?
So it's a great question. So obviously in CrossFit, right, there's a pyramid of like a foundation, and it starts at the base with, nutrition, and then it goes into weights and conditioning, and then gymnastics, and at the very top, sport, right? So for cheer, in regards to gymnastics and CrossFit, I mean, they go hand in hand. Gymnastics is a huge part of what we do in CrossFit. We want to be able to be light on our hands, know exactly how to use our body, because a lot of workouts require you to be very aware of your body and how to use it, and especially in a gymnastics manner with, pull-ups, handstand walking, muscle-ups, handstand push-ups, pistols. So being very body aware and being very aware of how to maintain good posture in these different difficult positions it goes hand in hand with both different sports.
Coach Mekel's been, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of direct application of CrossFit with athletic performance above myself. But, the biggest thing I remember and that I use when it comes to developing strength conditioning programs for cheer athletes is gymnastics. And I know that's a very, it's in our realm for the cheerleaders that are listening and the cheer athletes and cheer supporters that are listening, try to detach gymnastics from the mindset of competitive gymnastics that we're used to, and think more of gymnastics as in the broad philosophical basis of body awareness, body movement, body control. And so when we look at cheer, not in the competitive sense is cheer similar to gymnastics, but in the philosophical regards with body movement and exercise, cheer is very, very similar to gymnastics in that we're not only controlling our own body movements with regards to tumbling, jumps, dance even. I mean, there's aspects of dance that are gymnastics related, but also picking other athletes up, putting them into the air, and controlling the body positions of other athletes. Do we find a lot of bleed over of the philosophical form of gymnastics, body awareness and body strength and body movement, versus the specific sport of gymnastics? And so when you look at CrossFit provides an extremely specific focus on gymnastics being a foundation of fitness. Because in the CrossFit philosophy, and Coach Mick, correct me if I'm wrong, in the CrossFit philosophy, you can't move a weight unless you can move yourself first. And
right, absolutely.
And so with cheer, we think about our weight is another person. So in order to safely move another person, we need to be able to first move ourselves.
Right, and I think one of the big things that connects that is that you have building up your whole body again as a whole, and being able to move your body in these difficult positions, i.e., gymnastics, pulling, pull-ups, when you're jumping and tumbling and all that stuff. So being very strong with your body and learning how to use your body as a tool and mastering that it can take you, to great lengths of fitness, in CrossFit and in, with cheer. The better foundation you have, the better athlete you're going to become.
Absolutely. So, the biggest thing I've thought about as someone who's looked to develop cheer athletes, the biggest difficulty I found is the translation of, using certain activities as our kind of building blocks for becoming a better cheer athlete. So like we talked about earlier in our kind of mini lightning round was, a toss to hands to press, right? So it'd be like a clean and jerk, right? So the thing that I look at that's where we get to a little bit of that I don't know area is when you look at a cheerleader, I'm doing that clean and jerk motion with a living, breathing barbell, essentially, right? So I've got a human being that has the ability to stay tight and do well, or to freak out and want to bail, right? So for some of the people that have looked at some of the Olympic lifts and some of the strength and conditioning lifts, talk to us about some of the variations that you as a coach will design for athletes in your gym that you train to be able to kind of take up, like, let's say, if instead of using a barbell, we're using an unstable object like a person. In our training, how can we apply different stimulus to make that more applicable? What kind of things can we use to make things that would seem normal, like a clean and jerk, how can we make that more applicable to cheer athletes?
So I think one of the ways I train my athletes to be able to develop and learn is we start off with very basic stuff. So we start off with almost no weight with a PVC pipe and then build up from there. And we slowly progress and add weights as they can gain and experience their knowledge and they get a better foundation of how to perform the lift. We slowly start adding weight, or we slowly start creating different intensities for like a specific workout. So, some days may require you to lift a heavy weight overhead for an overhead squat. Other days we may be doing a power snatch at a high volume with a lower rep, with a lower weight, and creating all these different adaptations and these different ways of doing the same movement really allows the body to adapt and then perform in those different varying situations. So like, with a person, obviously throwing a person overhead, you're going to have people who weigh differently, who maybe weigh more or less. maybe they are body aware and can stay up, over with you pressing them overhead, can stay pretty stable. Some people, like you said yourself, may freak out. So with CrossFit, the way we make people, get ready for that would be, we change the different types of things that we do even just like the same movement. So the more challenges you can create, the better the body will adapt, and then the better athlete you will have to use.
One of the things that we've talked about in the past would be, stimulus. And some of the previous podcasts and some of the blogs that we've written, is we talk about the body's ability to adapt to a stimulus is what actually increases our athletic performance and increases our capacity. Again, stealing straight from CrossFit as a huge CrossFit fan. So let's say, for instance, we talk about that clean and jerk, right? And we go back to that, since that's an easy thing to think about for most of our athletes. So talk about, if you wouldn't mind, can you explain the differences between, let's say, a barbell clean and jerk, a kettlebell clean and jerk, a dumbbell clean and jerk, a single arm clean and jerk, and talk about how that in and of itself can benefit a cheer athlete?
Sure, absolutely. So, again, like I said, with a clean and jerk, we're taking the whole idea behind the clean and jerk is you're taking a weight from the ground, again, bringing it into that front rack position that we spoke about, and then driving it up overhead so that the barbell is over your head with your arms fully locked out. Now, again, we can create all these different adaptations of that same movement. So we use, like I said, a kettlebell. So instead of one solid piece of it, now you have one tiny piece of equipment, and then you're going to use it usually per arm. So from there you would kind of swing, but the whole mentality of the lift stays the same. So you're still keeping it close to the body. You're still extending through the hips. You would bring it there to the outside of your shoulder, and then from there you would use your legs and your hips to drive that kettlebell straight overhead. Same thing would go with like a dumbbell. You're grabbing a pair of dumbbells. The dumbbells would start on the floor. You would pull close to the body, extend through the hip, bring the dumbbells to the outside of the shoulder, or the top of the shoulder, I would say, and then from there again with the legs, driving it all the way overhead. And the same could be applied with one kettlebell or two kettlebells. So you're creating all these different adaptations, and you're creating all this different stimulus, but the movement itself is staying very, very, very similar.
No, that's and that's the thing that I want people to recognize, is that the cool thing about CrossFit is that there's no ceiling, right? Like there's no cap,
right,
to what our athletes are not only able to do, but what we expect them to be able to do. So when we take something like cheer that has, specific requirements that we look at, instead of being, pigeonholed as to this is how the only way to achieve it, CrossFit allows us to push the envelope kind of on all of the edges of cheer and what we expect out of a cheer athlete, to where we can create an infinite amount of stimulus to progress that athlete.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the things I was talking to a cheer coach not long ago, and in CrossFit, for those of our listeners that aren't, super familiar with CrossFit, there are 3 energy systems that we work with. And if you guys have listened a couple of podcasts ago, there was actually an episode we did about conditioning, and the episode was, are we conditioning properly? So when you think about a cheer athlete, the maximum amount of effort that a cheer athlete should be able to produce is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So it's the length of a routine. Excuse me. So the length of a routine, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So when we look at the cheer athlete, we have to create competency and capacity in that range. And what that means is that we need an athlete to be able to perform efficiently in that 2 minutes and 30 seconds range. Now,
Right.
the way the CrossFit approaches, fitness in general is that we want all athletes to be functionally capable through all time domains, right? So whether it's a 30-second sprint or a 2-hour run, CrossFit's goal is to provide the stimulus necessary to create a competent athlete across all time domains, as Coach Mekel talked about earlier. The cool thing is that we can use CrossFit to then narrow down specifically what we need for our sport. So if we take something that is generally decided upon as being a general and broad domain fitness regimen like CrossFit, which basically means you're going to be good at 30-second sprints, just as good as you're going to be good at 2.5 to 3 minute jogs, versus just as good as you're going to have to be at running a 5K. So we can take CrossFit and look at their philosophy and their application of fitness and say, okay, we have a group of athletes, cheer athletes, that need to be able to run full intensity routines at 2 minutes and 30 seconds apiece and be able to perform that multiple times without fatiguing. So when we look at the training regimen of CrossFit, I could come to someone like Coach Mekel and say, I need my athletes to be able to perform 2 of the 3 energy systems very well. Those 3 energy systems, as we talked about in that previous podcast, were number 1, our sprint energy system, the first 10 to 30 seconds. Maximum effort, 95 to 100% effort, all out. That's a unique energy system in the body.
Right.
Then we have our second energy system, which is that 30 seconds to 2 minutes is the way it's taught. I like to say cheer athletes can push an extra 30 seconds. So that 30 seconds to 2 minutes and 30 seconds is an energy system in and of itself. And then beyond that, we reach that long duration, I'm going to jog a 5K type energy system. So as a coach, I can come to someone like Coach Mekel who specializes in maximizing these 3 different energy systems and say, Coach Mick, I have a cheer team. I need to be able to have my cheer athletes perform a 2 minute and 30-second routine full out at least 10 to 20 times in a practice session. How can we do that? And
That's a great question.
Mekel would be able to say, let's create a program based on that. Can you, I know that was a lot, but explain how when you have the specific needs, you can dial back CrossFit from being a general purpose program to a athlete or team specific program.
Look, again, like I said, that's a great question. It's a great, tool. I think with CrossFit, obviously it is generalized, it is broad, but in that broad area, we are training a bunch of different energy systems, i.e. some workouts may be, like you said yourself, maybe it may be a 5K run that you do on one day for a workout. The next day we may be doing, 30-second to 1 minute max effort rowing sprints for, let's say 10 rounds. Other days maybe, we're just going to move through this workout at a, 60 to 70% pace just to kind of move around. We're not going to really try to get too intense. So even though it is generalized, in all that big generalization, we are training throughout all these 3 different energy systems. And so with being able to program for a specific sport like cheer, we could take what you would need as far as being to be able to perform in that, 2 minute and 30-second time frame. And we could use that modality to create a bunch of different workouts and training regimens that would create that same kind of adaptation, that same kind of feeling for, okay, I need to push as hard as I can for X amount of time. And I need to be able to do it over and over again. So, with CrossFit, again, having that training system as part of the philosophy behind CrossFit, that's something that as a coach and an instructor, I could definitely be like, okay, I know, we can do rowing sprints, or we can, use our body weight and we can do, a max set of burpees in 30 seconds, and we can repeat that over and over again. So there's a lot of different ways that we could create that same kind of stimulus that could directly correlate to being able to perform at that level in a cheer routine or competition.
So, one of the terms that I loved that I use on a regular basis, and this is kind of a rhetorical question, but, CrossFit is infinitely variable, right?
Yeah, essentially, I mean, you're only limited really by your imagination. So we could create, I don't even know, a 1,000 different workouts for 1,000 different days. And you could get a different stimulus out of each of those days. I mean, that's the beauty of it. You're just limited really to your imagination as to what you want to do. It
kind of reminds me of when BJ Penn came up with the Fight Gone Bad, right? I mean, his whole goal with that workout was to, for those that don't know, BJ Penn was a UFC fighter who got into CrossFit really heavily. He loved functional fitness and decided, I want to make a CrossFit workout that mimicked what being in a UFC fight would be. So, it's a 5-minute routine. It's a 5-minute workout, 5 different stations. You're doing max effort 5 times, or for each exercise with no break. So for him, it was like mimicking a 5-minute round in a UFC fight. And there's 2 different variations. One's a 3-round for a regular fight, and then a 5-round for what would be a championship fight, right? So just by taking the philosophy of CrossFit and saying, this is what I need to adapt it for, he was able to create a CrossFit specific workout that's actually, I mean, let's be real. I mean, anybody that's done CrossFit knows Fight Gone Bad is one of the worst, most terrible workouts in CrossFit.
Oh yeah, it's brutal.
It's terrible, right? So, and a lot of athletes use Fight Gone Bad as a benchmark to their fitness. So, I mean, Coach Mick, if I gave you 30 minutes, how hard would it be for you to design Cheer Gone Bad and create a cheer routine workout specific for cheerleading that would build cheer athletes?
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be that difficult at all. Again, because it's just taking the principles of CrossFit and applying it directly to what you guys would need as cheer athletes. And so, like I said, they tie into each other very well. I mean, I could create a workout where we would be in different stations, and then we would have to perform jumping drills, pulling drills, tucking drills, and you'd have to perform those over and over again as many times as you could, in a certain amount of time, and then repeat that over and over again for 5 or 6 rounds. So it's definitely something that you could definitely do without any kind of problem.
And the goal, for our listeners, the goal that Coach Mick would be trying to achieve with you guys is, you look at creating a functional capacity beyond what you need, right? So like, let's say we have a 2-minute, 30-second routine. Well, if you could perform fitness activities for 2 minutes and 30 seconds 10 times, let's say we had a 10-round 2-minute, 30-second activity. I mean, it's 23 and a half minutes of fitness, which is really not that much. But if you only have to complete a routine one time with maybe 10 minutes of warm-up prior to that, Coach Mick and the CrossFit philosophy would prepare you to be more fit than you would ever need for competition. Absolutely. And so the idea is to create an athlete that is so adapted to their sport that actually sport falls beneath their physiological and fitness needs.
Right. Because you're essentially, by doing all these different variations of workouts at different levels and different intensities for different sets of time and different rounds, and i.e., you're basically you're breaking down your body to build it up that much more for whatever sport you need to do.
No, I think that's great, man. And I know that our listeners now, for those that don't have a good, that haven't had a good understanding of CrossFit, or that maybe, I mean, obviously you and I both know there's, for some folks, a negative stigma of CrossFit. I hope that you're able to see how we can take something like CrossFit, whose whole philosophy is being, across the board of fitness, CrossFit, across the realm of fitness as being something that, as cheer is, we're not a specific need. We're a very generalized athlete in that we need to be strong. We need to be flexible. We need to be able to do gymnastics. We need to be able to be agile. All of these things are basic foundational components of CrossFit. They're actually the basic competencies that CrossFit expects out of people that do CrossFit: agility, flexibility, gymnastics, strength, accuracy. I mean, all these things that if you were to describe the cheer experience of practice, competitions, etc., these things all fall under exactly what CrossFit is. And so I think, honestly, I believe that there is truly a future with regards to how CrossFit and cheerleading can blend, in that as we watch cheerleading become an Olympic sport, which, we're hoping for 2020, we're more realistically expecting 2024, but those gears are turning, and those things are in the works to where we're only a step or two away from full Olympic status.
Absolutely.
I feel like CrossFit is going to be a methodology of strength conditioning training outside of cheer specific activities, where we're going to see our top level cheer programs. I truly believe that CrossFit will be, or could be, a big, a big stepping stone as to which programs are going to be, the most efficient. So I'm really glad that we're able to connect with you with regards to your expertise in CrossFit and how those lines can be, in a good way, those lines can be blurred. So of course, we're not going to get away from the lightning round, which I did not tell you about at all, but now you're going to get thrown into the fire, because nobody gets away from an interview without the lightning round. So question number 1, what is your favorite color, number, and city on the planet?
All right. So favorite color would have to be, I would say, like a army green color. Probably be my favorite color. Favorite number, I would have to go with 17. And favorite city would definitely have to be San Diego, California.
If you were to get rid of one state in the United States, which one would you get rid of and why?
That's a good question. I guess at the top of my head, I would probably say New Mexico. And to be honest, I really don't have a very valid reason, but that's just the first state that comes to the top of my mind is I would get rid of from the United States would be New Mexico.
Okay. What is the funniest thing that has happened to you in the last month?
Funniest thing that's happened to me within the last month. Oh, I can think of one. It's funny. It's funny to everybody else. To me, it's okay. But my girlfriend, I took a picture with my girlfriend, and she's like sitting behind me, acting all goofy and smiling, and I'm just staring off with a very stern face. And everybody thought it's hilarious because that kind of perfectly describes our relationship. But I mean, that's just kind of how I am.
Very serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And last question. Someone gave you an elephant. You can't give it away, and you can't sell it. What are you going to do with the elephant?
I would, I guess, buy a piece of land and have the elephant as a pet. You know what I mean?
What would you name it?
I don't. Bob the elephant.
That kind of fits. For those of you guys that don't know Coach Mick, he's got a pit bull mix, Winston, that he's had for years, and just recently there was another dog of another pit bull mix that was found not far from where he lives that was homeless and was kind of living on the streets. He and his girlfriend Paulina took this dog. And what did y'all name this dog?
Her name's Ivy.
So without hesitation, they saw the need to take in this stray dog that was living, not far from where they live. And Mick's got a huge heart. And so I wouldn't be, it doesn't surprise me that you would keep the elephant, buy a piece of property to put it on and give it a human name, because that seems to be kind of your shtick.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, Mick, I can't thank you enough, man. I thank you for not only your friendship, but, your expertise when it comes to functional fitness and how it applies to all types of athletes. For those that are in the San Antonio area or in the nearby area, New Braunfels, Austin, anywhere in Texas, Coach Mick, again, level 2 CrossFit instructor, head coach at 210 CrossFit here in San Antonio, Texas. And then additionally, for those of our listeners that are in different parts of the country, Coach Mick does have a social media presence. Instagram is 210 Coach Mick or Coach Mick 210.
Yeah, it's so Instagram is at Coach Mick 210, and then again, if anybody, if you have any, I'm always open to questions. If there are anybody out there that is on the fence about CrossFit and how it can help them become a better cheer athlete, please have them, shoot me an email at Mekel, which is MEKEL at 210CrossFit.com, and I'll be more than happy to answer, any questions that they may have.
Very cool. And so if anybody has any direct inquiries for us, if you struggle to get a hold of Coach Mick, just shoot us a message and we'll get you guys connected through either email or social media. Mick, thank you so much for joining us tonight, man. I'm so glad to have you on, and I hope we can have you on in the future to talk about, more specific ways that CrossFit can benefit the cheer community.
Yeah, thank you so much, man, for having me. Appreciate it.
So there we have it, guys. I want to thank you so much for joining for this episode. It was really beneficial to be able to get an expert in CrossFit to come in and discuss with us how things like CrossFit and some of the philosophies that they have are very similar to some of the ideas and philosophies that we use in cheer. And hopefully you guys were able to kind of get an idea of how exactly CrossFit can help us to build better cheer athletes. One thing I want to ask before you guys sign off for the day, if you have gotten anything out of this podcast that's been beneficial to you, whether it's been this episode, another episode, please take a second, go to your podcast link, whether it's Spotify or iTunes or Google Play Music, wherever you're listening to us. Stop by for just a second, leave us a rating, leave us a review. We're not asking for 5 stars if you don't believe we deserve 5 stars. All we're asking is just leave a comment, leave a review, leave a rating. It helps us to grow. It helps us to expand our reach so that we can help more cheer athletes. So if you wouldn't mind, do that for us. It would mean the world. Thanks again for joining, guys. We'll catch you on the next episode.